Hello, my name is John Roskam. I'm a Senior Fellow at the Institute of Public Affairs, and welcome to this edition of IPA Encounters with Colin Lillie. Colin is a proud Australian, a proud Northern Territorian, a great and award-winning musician, and also the husband of Senator Jacinta Nampijinpa Price. I'll be talking with Colin here in the IPA studios in Melbourne about freedom of expression, about what it's like to be an independent musician today, and about his involvement in politics. Colin, thank you for being with us.
John, how are you? It's great to be here.
What did I miss about you in that introduction?
No, you said all the nice things. That's good.
What are the not nice things I didn't say?
Oh, there's a lot of not nice things, I think, but that would be a chat with Jacinta, I think. You would have to talk to my wife about that, you know.
Who is Colin Lillie? How did you come to be Australian? How did you come to be Northern Territorian?
There's a couple of stories I like to tell. I like to say I was sitting in a pub in Edinburgh with two Aussie blokes and woke up in Alice Springs. But I had an Irish girlfriend at the time who basically always wanted to travel to Australia. She had an older brother who said he had the best time in Australia. And I met her in Edinburgh, and we came over for a year's working visa. Now, she had the worst of times because I had the best of times. I fell in love with the place. I think my passion and love for Australia was when I took the drive from the Gold Coast across to the Red Centre, which was the most inspiring, emotional journey I think I've ever taken, personal journey I've ever taken up to that point in my life. It was just, and I think when I got to Alice and I spent 3 months in Alice, and I went back to Ireland and I said, I want to go back to Alice Springs, and she said, I don't. So I went, oh, well, I'll go over for 3 months more, and came over and never went back. That was it.
Before you came to Australia, what was your background in Scotland?
I had a very, my life back home in Scotland was a very different life than what I do have now. My life was dependent on alcohol and drugs. I was an alcoholic and I was a drug addict. My life was that of, I understood hardship. My mother was disabled, post-polio. When I was really young, she was in and out of hospital. I had to be a carer for my younger brother. I always remember we had a home help come round one time, and she caught me, I must have been about 4 or 5, cooking toast and boiled eggs. And she was shocked that I was at the oven and I was at the cooker. But that was just part and parcel. You had to learn to be resilient and cope on your own. My dad was a workaholic, but he was also passionate about his alcohol. And as the years have gone by, we've realised that Dad has definitely got a place on the spectrum, and he very, very much... we went home in 2016, and even all our boys noticed, geez, Grumps is definitely autistic, eh? Just the way he does things, and you just look at... So my dad was somebody who he's very, very quiet man, as I like to say back then. Wasn't very forward in his emotions and being open about things. If I wanted to spend time with my father, I had to sit in his space. And if I wanted to spend time with my mother, I had to sit in their space, you know? So I was always told, and I've always been told, that I was the emotional one in the family. So there was a time when there was a lot of domestic violence, abuse. Well, I guess what people would call domestic violence and abuse today, like, you know. For me, it was just the norm. I remember going to school when I was about 12 and having bruises, and first realising at 12 that, you know, having bruises wasn't a normal thing to have on your body, like, you know. And we can justify all those things, and we can say, oh, this, that, and other, but, you know, you have to grow. So for me in Scotland, I definitely wanted to leave from a very young age. I wanted to leave home from a very young age. I always remember looking at the sky and looking at planes, and I always thinking, I wonder where that plane's going. I wonder what the people are doing in that plane. I always had this sense of wanting to be away, not because I didn't belong. So I guess for me in Scotland, it was always a sense of not knowing who I really was because I was too busy being something else for somebody else.
And was that your way into music? How did you come to music?
So from a young age, music was something that was an escape. You know, I'd go to church, and I loved going to church because I could sing and I could free up and feel free and have a sense of I did belong to something. But like most teenagers, I had a rebellious moment where I rebelled against my faith and I rebelled against the church because I was trying to figure out where I belonged. And at school, I did some choir work and I sung in choir, but it was certainly not until...
Did your parents encourage this or teachers encourage it?
There was nothing really encouraged with Colin because Colin was a bit of a handful, like, you know. So it was all about, the encouragement was to find calm, to be a bit more in the moment, not full of anxiety, fear. But again, we're keeping secrets at a young age. We're not talking about what's going on at home. We're not talking about the sense of being a young person who is afraid to be themselves at home. So when they're not at home, they act out and are seen as a troubled individual. So the adults around them are trying to work out why that is the case. And then you go home and you've got to be quiet, you've got to sit, you can't speak, you've not got the freedom to be who you are. So music for me was that escape in my room, headphones, and that way of becoming lost and allowing my imagination to be something more.
What did you listen to?
So I always loved when my parents would leave the house because I could play the records. My mum had an excellent record collection, and my dad had a complete and utter old man folky accordion music. So at some point I realized I fell in love with lyrics more than I fell in love with melody. I would have been maybe 11, but I heard a song that was a cover by the Corries, which were these folkies. They wrote the Flower of Scotland, the Scottish national anthem. And it was a song about, I think it might have been Ed Macaulay song about post-war, The Strangest Dream it's called. And I heard this song and I remember sitting there crying because it was just beautifully sung, but the lyrics had this sentiment that imagine we listened to one another. Imagine we just talked. And I guess at that age, I was hungry to talk about things like, you know, but again, it was all locked away. So for me, anything that made me feel, anything that had me move emotionally, anything that could make me disconnect from reality, and that was everything. There was nothing that I did not love or like. I didn't really get into instrumental stuff because, again, I was looking for some wisdom. I was looking for a sense of, you're okay, you're not alone. And that comes through words. So for me, like, I did have a secret stash of soul music and R&B under the bed that only ever came out when I was trying to crack onto a girl or whatever, and say, "Oh, listen to this music, it's great." But I was into heavy metal and when I was a lot younger. So that for me, again, I wasn't listening to the noise of the instruments; it was the words, and within the genre of thrash metal at that time, the words were really connecting. They were angsty, they were about emotion, it was about free, it was about letting go, it was about being okay to feel angst. And I guess anger for me was something that was easy. It was easy for me to connect with because I was so angry. Yeah, so I was listening to everything and anything I could. The first time I ever heard Billy Connolly was on a cassette. You know, my mum caught me underneath my blankets, laughing my head off, because my dad did not like Billy Connolly because what he did spoke about the crucifixion and stuff. And oh my goodness, my mother went into one of those moments where you have with your parents. You suddenly have a moment and you go, "Oh, this is okay," and then then you're back to normal. Where we were sitting listening to Billy Connolly, so definitely got a sense of humour from my mother. And a passion for music. So anything and everything.
And then what was your musical journey after the age of 11?
So my musical journey after that, well, nothing really. I did school choir, and then I was lucky enough to be part of a choir outside the school when I was 17, but then that was it. It wasn't until I came to Australia did my musical journey really begin. That journey from the Gold Coast to Alice Springs, that opened up something that was just, that's why I knew straight away the desert was a magical place for me.
So you come to Australia with a girlfriend?
Yes. We leave.
You leave?
We do a bit more travelling around the world. I come back to Australia. And
to do what? What were you going to do?
To see everybody I'd met. It was basically the people. I had never been anywhere in my whole entire life where you could walk down the street and meet somebody from a different part of the world. And they were from a different part of the world because you could hear them. Yeah. Or you would meet somebody whose family were from a different part of the world. Or you would meet somebody whose family had been in that part of the world for so long. I'd never been anywhere like that because in Scotland, I've always said you can stand in any place on this planet and you could say, you could be Aussie, mate. You could be Aussie. You can't really do that in Scotland. When I hear about people going, I never really understood racism either. I didn't grow up with that concept of racism. White people hating on black people or people of colour. Because where I grew up, everybody was this colour. And everybody who had colour were either doctors, they were either nurses, they were either shop owners, or they were business owners. So there was an element of respect as a kid with people with colour because they were above in the ladder of success, that element of you're doing well. And when I got to Alice Springs, there was none of that either.
What did you see in Alice Springs?
In Alice Springs, I saw a world I wanted to be part of. That's what I saw in Alice Springs. I mean, I'd travelled to Australia. I'd been to Melbourne, I'd been to Cairns, I'd been to Sydney, I had been to South Australia. And sure, that's all wonderful and it's great. And the very first time I ever went to a Myer store in Melbourne and went to the food court, half an hour I was walking around looking at how many different foods there was available from all over the world. That's my brain. We had a Chinese takeaway and a chip shop in our village. And that was it. And I remember when the Indian and the larger town next to us opened, I was in my early 20s when I had my first ever Indian. I wanted a bit of everything. I wanted to try everything that day. I was blown away. Just little things like that, So going to Alice Springs, it was just, even in Alice Springs, they had all these different foods. Even in Alice Springs, they had all these different people. And it's such a small place. I never in my whole entire life ever thought I would end up living in a town called Alice. You know what I mean? I mean, as a kid, I remember listening to bands like Men at Work and Midnight Oil and not really recognising what was being said. It was just that they're Australian, singing those songs, but here I am living in that.
What do you think made those songs Australian?
How they sounded. And the narrative, once you got older, you realise the story they're telling. They're telling different stories. It's all about stories, John. It's all about how we convey our lived experience and bring it across. That's what we do every day when we walk down the street. When we walk down the street and we say good morning to somebody or we put our hand out to shake somebody's hand, that is what we're doing. We're adding to our story. So for me, I mean, as a kid, I would hear Midnight Oil turn around and go, beds are burning. I'd go, geez, it must be hot there. You know, because I had no idea what they were
talking about. Yeah.
But the melody and the words, I would be listening to the words and going like, oh, that's really hot. And then as you grow older, you listen to the words and go, oh, they've got issues there as well. You know, like, and you realise through music that some issues are serious, but when you look at history, you realise, but they're no different for the issues we've had. We're just a wee bit further on, or we're slightly a bit behind in that. Australia, I remember having a maths teacher who came over from Australia for the bicentenary year. There was a school exchange with the teachers. Our maths teacher at high school went to Australia, and we had Miss Dool that came. She was fantastic. The way she taught maths was much more about not structure, but about understanding the sense of freedom that learning mathematics can bring you. Like, you know, what you can do with maths, rather than you just do this and get it done, will you? The way she taught, for me, was wonderful. She made the numbers more about, a bit like Australia. It opens you up. So she opened up, like, she was a great teacher, like Miss Dool. And plus she had this great T-shirt where she put brandy in it when we did a fun run, and she was doing this fun run sucking on brandy. And I went, those Aussies are all right.
How did music start for you in Alice Springs? So you're in Alice Springs, you're looking for a job, are you working, or?
Yeah, well, I came to Alice Springs. The first time I came to Alice Springs, I was on a year's working visa. I'd worked all over Australia. I got myself a job at Coles in Alice, and the girl I was with, she got a job at the Irish bar in Alice Springs. There used to be an Irish bar called Sean's Bar, and they had a jam night, and Eileen goes to me, she says, you get up and sing. I said, I'm not singing in front of people, that's just stupid. She says, you do it. Like, and I had a guitar, because I travelled with this guitar, and she asked me, she said, what are you doing with this guitar? I said, I'm going to learn guitar. She says, you're not going to learn guitar. Because what she did for me was she threw a book in front of me. She says, because I was so full of this angst, she said, write out what you're feeling. And that was my journey. I would say that was probably my beginning of my musical journey, because I started writing about what I was feeling. So she made me get up and sing a Bon Jovi song and a Scottish traditional song, which was called The Masquerade of Glencoe.
And you were doing this in an Irish pub?
In an Irish pub, like, you know. And I'd sung, and I remember vomiting before we did it. And then I sat there, played, and there was silence at the very end. And I just went, oh, yeah. And I just got up and walked away. And people just, where are you going? We want more. And I had my good friend that taught me a bit more guitar and heard me singing Alice Springs, turned around and goes to me, he says, geez, Colin, you can bloody sing, but you can't play guitar for shit. It's typical. Or I should have put, mate, I'll tell you right now, you can play guitar like shit, but you can sing, mate. Right? That's what he did, right? And then I went, all right then, so what do I do? Keep singing, mate. Just don't play guitar. You know, I'm kind of like, all right, thanks very much. I ended up playing with him for a few years. He was the one who pushed me to start writing original songs a bit more. I met a beautiful... So
your first EP was 2012?
2012. And that was because a beautiful lady from Melbourne and her partner, Amira, was really pushing me to become a more original artist. You know, like, I could make money as a cover artist, but she was saying, no, you've got a lot to say. You should write more. So that first EP I did was my toe in the water to being an independent artist. It was that, and through that I met Jacinta through that EP. Like, you know, I'd recorded it, and I needed musicians around town to come and support me play. And you know, Jacinta knew a lot of musos and stuff, so we started. Well, Jacinta and we started seeing one another, and we wrote a song together. Jacinta's a collector of people, and at that time I was probably just a part of a collection, like, you know. But yeah, and then it developed from that into something else.
So it's developed into being at Tamworth, Nashville, albums released.
Yep.
You've travelled the world. You've won awards.
Yep.
Did you ever think it would lead to this?
I never even imagined I would be singing, John. I always wanted to, if that makes sense. I always wanted to. I always wanted to entertain. I always wanted to take people away from their humdrum life and take them away, even if it was for just 10, 15 minutes, and make them feel that the world was okay. And I know that's very, as we put it now, it's a bit airy-fairy, like, you know, but I think when you've come from trauma, you understand when you meet people who are going through trauma. And when you've been around, you know, circumstances which are very, very, well, I guess evil's a good way to put it. When you've been around evil, you smell it, and you just want people to be taken away from that, and you want to protect them from. And being an entertainer, we can do that. We can take them away from their humdrum life, and we can give them half an hour, 40 minutes, an hour, 2 hours of freedom.
So I'll talk about politics in a moment, but before I do that, so you're a musician. Mm-hmm. You've become increasingly an outspoken
that's something that
musician. Tell me about that. Tell me about how your fellow musos deal with you, because we tend to think of musicians as independent, idiosyncratic spirits.
Yes.
But increasingly they're not.
Yeah, some of them are.
They follow the crowd. Tell me about that.
I did have the romantic view that we were the future of storytelling, of creating a narrative.
Bravery.
We could create a better world. Like you're given that idea that a song can change the world, you know, and you go through that idea. I could write one song and it could change absolutely everything. Well, the truth is that's not the case. Like, you know, like I've always believed from a dream comes an idea, from an idea comes an action, and from an action comes a result, right? So a song originates from a moment in your life, or a moment in someone else's life, or something you've observed. And you then might have a dream, or it might just be an idea. An action is to create it. But then after that, once you've created it, you need other people in your life to help you get it out to the world. We live in this world of social media where you watch social media and it goes, oh my goodness, look at that song's went straight to... No, that's not how it works. We're part of an industry. And it sort of was brought more clearer to me, the more and more people that discovered I was with my wife, as you know, my wife and I, we were separating our careers. Like, you know, she was moving in one direction and I was moving in this direction. And it became more and more apparent that people would judge me guilty by association because of her political stand and her mother's political stand.
Did you lose friends?
I've lost a lot of friends, but I've gained friends as well. But
talk about losing friends. So musos, because of your politics, or
you know,
what?
Like for me. So the biggest loss I feel in my career so far has been losing my manager. You know, I had the manager he was a beautiful and a really beautiful bloke. He was very much supportive of my career and what he saw we could do. But, you know, Jacinta is very, very driven on what she knows she can do. And each time we hit a hurdle, we're like, what's going on? And he basically said to me, he said, look, we're going to have to just look at Jacinta like a handicap. You've got this handicap on your career because people didn't want to work with me. Festivals didn't want to employ me.
They ever say why?
Well, they just said we know his wife's politics and we're not wanting to associate it, you know? So that was a hurdle that we were up against, you know? Like,
what was your reaction to that?
I guess at the time, it was very much... I would probably say, okay, then we'll go with that. We'll see how we go. We'll travel with that. I'll give that because I understand human beings. I understand that human beings can be very emotional and can be driven by their emotions. And as artists and creatives, that is what we do. We are driven by our emotions. It's what helps us create. So
you're taking... So a lot of people listening to this and watching our discussion would say, Colin's taking this pretty well. Yeah, and don't get me wrong, even Jacinta was like, Colin, why are you allowing this to happen?
And I would go, because that's who we are as artists. We are emotional. And you know, it's about, okay, you're not going to work with me, the next person might. And the fear of not having a career overweighed the silence of saying nothing. Like, you know, it was fearful that I may never get to perform again. The fear of I may never get to sing with someone else. The fear of I might not get the producer I want to get.
Did you ever think this was all too hard?
It's too hard, but it's also very hard, John, even if you didn't have this. It's not like, if I wanted a job where I was going to make money, I would have put my head down and bum up, and I would have got into law. I would have got into being a doctor. Well, maybe not so much a doctor at the moment, but I would have got into something where there was a dead set income that was going to have wealth. I would have taken an easy option. And that is one thing I've never done, is taken the easy option. I've always wanted to push myself to see how far I go. And that is being an artist. Because how can I possibly produce my best art if I'm not pushing myself to be the best that I can be? And for a long time, me allowing these people to think and make that decision about my career was me sort of killing them with kindness, I guess, hoping that somebody would see the art before the politics. But as time's gone on, I've realised that's the fairy tale.
So if we go back, so when you were losing friends, when you were losing gigs, your politics wasn't public as yet. It was simply that you were married to Jacinta Price.
And to be honest, my politics...
So let's then come to your politics. So the story is that during the Voice referendum campaign, the wonderful people at Advance came to your home in Alice Springs to talk to Jacinta and film that wonderful documentary about Jacinta. And you were there. What happened?
Yeah, Stephen at Advance, like, this is just where it goes a bit mental. So Stephen
at Advance?
Yeah, Stephen at Advance.
Working for Advance?
Yeah. He turned around and says, look, Colin's here. We think maybe Colin would be... Your story of Colin and you, Colin being Scottish, now Australian, and you being Aboriginal and moving into politics, that is the Australian story.
So Steve says this to Jacinta?
Yeah, like that was something, and Jacinta goes, all right, I'll have words with him. And she, you know, like...
What did Jacinta say to you?
Do you want to be part of this no thing?
So, famous words. Do you want to be part of this no thing? What did you say?
Stephen thinks your story would be a great...
Yeah, good story. Yeah.
And I went, and I'm going... I think by that time I was ready for...
Why did you hesitate? You first hesitated and then you jumped in, boots and all. What happened?
Because I was ready for the fight. Because I had seen how my wife's been treated. I had seen... And we're a blended family, John. We have... There's my son and Jacinta's sons, and we are one family of so many in Australia. We're Aboriginal, we're migrant, we are, you know, like we're a mix up. We are what Australia is. That's what I believed. And when I'm listening and observing Jacinta and I'm seeing what this voice to Parliament was all about, I went, that isn't what I've been, that isn't the reason why I came to Australia. And so when Stephen goes...
What about it?
I went, yeah, let's do it. Because I don't want my wife fighting this on her own. And I didn't want people like me who came to Australia because wherever they might come from, there's a hierarchy who believe that they are better than that mob. And it doesn't matter if it's because of money or if it's because of job or if it's because... It's just people thinking they are better. I don't like that, because I don't care if your education, you're smarter than me. I don't care if you've got more money than me. I don't care if you can sing a song better than me. I don't care if you've got a better, beautiful wife than me. It's how we interact with each other that matters to me. How when I look in your eyes and I say, hello, my name's Colin, how are you? And you look back at me and go, hey, how are you? That is the mark of a soul. That's what I was... That's what I came looking for. Connection. And the voice to Parliament was disconnecting connection with everybody. Because people think they're better than us. And this is where it gets a bit weird for me, because of the colour of their skin, or because they've went to university, or because they've had a better career, or because they had a better parents, or because they can say yes and please at the right time.
What did you say in the video? So you say, yes, Steve, Jacinta, I'll be in this video.
Yeah.
Did they tell you what to, and the video and the documentary is available on YouTube for people to see. It's very powerful. You talk about the melded and blended family.
Yeah.
Did you write what you were going to say?
No.
Did you just say it?
I just said it. What else? Why wouldn't I say something I believe in? The truth is always easier when you take the veil of the lie away. I've been a liar in my life. I've been a bullshit artist. I know bullshit when I see it, and I can smell it. And it was bullshit. And they were telling me that my family and the way it was and how Jacinta and I had built my family was wrong. I couldn't not say something. I couldn't just sit there. You know, in Alice Springs, we are under siege in our town. And politics is a weapon that's being used to not fix it. Because it doesn't matter what government comes in next. The new norm is what's going on in Alice. And everybody's going to be trying to maintain that it doesn't get worse. And that's not because of white people. That is not because of people of Asian descent or Indian or Aboriginal descent. That's because of humans.
What was the reaction that you got from what you said on the documentary?
A line going through my family. See, I didn't really take heed in that because I was there for Jacinta. I'm there for my wife. I'm her husband. A husband is meant to just support his wife.
You spoke for a lot of Australians.
Yep, I realise that now. I didn't realise that at the time.
What did people say to you? What was some of the feedback you got?
They were extremely grateful that I said what they were feeling. I realised how much fear there was, and people speaking their truth.
Talk about the fear. Because one of the things that Jacinta did and that you did during The Voice and Warren and others did is allowed Australians to speak about how they feel.
Yeah.
Why do you think we're afraid?
Because there's so much guilt about what history has been, what people pump as history. There's so much guilt. I got asked a couple of weeks ago by Mr. Abbott. Mr. Abbott asked me, he says, Colin, why do Scottish and Irish people have why are they so patriotic about, why do they have this staunch patriotism about who they are and their country? And I looked at him and I says, because we know what it's like for somebody to come and want to take it away. Australia's never had somebody come to the front door and say, we're taking this. So they've never really had to fight for what they have. I guess the local fellas have to an extent. And that's why they have that fire. But also the fact that our kids are being taught to feel guilty about who they are when it's got nothing to do with them. So there's a lot of fear about speaking truth, your own personal truth. When somebody calls you a racist, people take that personally and go, I'm not racist, instead of going, I'm not a racist. Because you're not a racist, because you've got nothing to do with that. You've got the same right as everybody else to put a government in, or it's like what we were saying earlier, before we came on and to do the interview, that now musicians, it seems that it's taken a big flip because the social media allows musicians to be politicians and politicians to be rock stars. We've flipped it all around because of social media wanting to get into people's personal lives. But then when people get into people's personal lives, they go, oh, wait, I don't like that. Well, don't like it, switch off. If you don't like it, switch off. You've got that. But it seems that when it came to The Voice, people were afraid to switch off and follow what their heart was saying.
Were you surprised by the strength of the vote for equality, the strength of the no vote?
No, because I'd met enough Aussies to know that they were. You know, like that silent majority. I just feel that silent majority now needs to be the noisy majority. They need to start coming out and, like, you know, what I've found about Australia is that being an Australian, you know, when I first came to Australia, I was a Scotsman. When I became an Australian, I became white. And I went, whoa, how did that happen? Like, wait a minute. But I realise now that Australia there is so much pride for the nation. There's so much love. There's so much passion. There's so much, and that is because they have come from somewhere else and they've built something. I just want to see that come out even more. I want to see that. I want people to stand up and go, I don't want our kids anymore to feel guilty about going to school and not acknowledging somebody because of their colour, just because history wasn't as pleasant for them. And I want our kids to realise that you should respect somebody's trauma, somebody's pain, but it doesn't mean you take it on. Have empathy. Empathy isn't about taking on somebody else's pain. Empathy is about understanding somebody else's pain and going, how can I help? Right? Instead of going, you did this to us, you did this, and you have to pay for this. No, nah, that's just wrong. I'm not having our kids grow up thinking, my stepson's thinking that they're victims, and my son, Jacinta's stepson, our youngest, turn around and go, oh, it's my fault. No, you're an individual. You're going through struggles. I had to do it. I had to find my way of pulling myself out of the mud, pulling myself out of the mental health issues, pulling myself in my pain, finding how I wanted to be a good husband, how I wanted to be a good father. I had to find that myself. And I had to do that by letting go of the victim, letting go of the pain of the past, and understanding forgiveness. And forgiveness is for me, not for who I'm forgiven, for me. And then moving forward. And I feel that The Voice wasn't about that. The Voice wasn't about going, let's forgive one another and let's move forward. You know, let's get on with this. There's too much crap going on outside Australia. Why on earth are we not building Australia so that we can have that beautiful utopia that our forefathers
we could have.
Yeah.
And we have had.
Yeah, exactly.
For you, what is the lesson of The Voice? Of the campaign, what happened to you, what happened to Jacinta, the result, what's the lesson?
I've learned that the Aussies are all about coming together and being one, as it was in the beginning, as it was for a nation that allowed women to be the first place in the world to have the vote, as it was that it's only taken, I know we go on about things, but if you look at America, how long it took for the slaves and the movement there for them to have the vote and be part of something, Australia's done that a lot quicker. There wasn't any slavery. There wasn't all the stories that we get told. We get told across the other side of the world. And you come here, that's not true. That's not what happened. And I'm lucky because I'm married to an Aboriginal woman and I'm married to her cultural history and I'm married to what I'm able to be shown through that cultural side of things. Yeah. So yeah, I love the fact that the Aussies went, nah, you're not going to push us around. Don't do it.
Final 2 questions. You're a musician, you're an artist who's brave and stood up for your music and your beliefs and your ideas. What advice would you give to up-and-coming young artists who feel they can't express?
Be brave, themselves. Be bold, be honest, be you, tell your truth, share your heart. Don't allow others to bully you into thinking that you are not worthy. Don't allow other ones to think that you have to have a cause. There has to be a because in everything that you do. be the best that you can be and love who you are. And if you're struggling to love yourself, then find people who connect with the same way. Don't hide in the shadows. Well, my fear is that we write beige music. We paint beige pictures. We tell beige stories. Mediocrity is the killer of art. It's the killer. All the stories were being told the same. The original stories we now have this idea that if you tell a story, you have to have a demographic, you have to have a diversity through it. Even if you're telling stories of the past, you have to bring in the present. How can you tell a historical story if you're changing the historical narrative? That is just wrong. I'm not saying that you shouldn't be able to be, if you're good enough for the job, then you do the job. If you're not good enough for the job, work harder and become better for the job. Don't expect society to lower its standards just because you don't feel like you're part of it. You know? That's what I teach our boys, is that if you want to do something, you've got to do it to the best of your ability. And it doesn't matter what the colour of your skin is, or what your past, or what your culture, or this historic trauma stuff that we hear about. You have to be the best. You must be the best. And if you're not the best, then how on earth do you expect to have the best results? So, yeah, that's what I would say to people. I'd say, be your best. Don't try to be the best of what somebody on social media thinks. Don't try to be the best of what you think a label might want. Don't try to be the best. Be the individual that you are and create your story and just be free with it. You know, the great stories that we read. I've just finished with Ivanhoe. You know, I love Ivanhoe. I've always loved Ivanhoe. Ivanhoe is as relevant now as it was then. You know? Because Sir Walter Scott he may have romanticised a moment, but he was telling a narrative that is today. Just like Rob Roy, it's a narrative we hold on. And a lot of people don't like the story of Rob Roy because it has the Scots going away and just disappearing and becoming part of the larger narrative.
Final question. What's next for Colin Lillie?
Oh yeah, that's huge at the moment. I've got to thank you for that, John. I'm doing this incredible project at the moment called This Land. I believe we need to change our education on how we educate our kids about music, our history of music here. I believe that we need to install a sense of pride, of pride in our music. Sure, we're part of a global network and the big aim is to be on the top 4% of what it means to be a musician. But as an independent artist, ground level, we all work together, and it doesn't matter about your colour, your culture, your race, your creed, or whatever. Your religion has got nothing to do with it. It's about creating art. And I feel we've lost that. And I feel our kids have lost that because we don't emphasise as much as we did about the creative arts. And being creative isn't about neglecting your English, your mathematics, your history, your geography. Being creative is allowing the brain to open up in a way that you can look at those other subjects differently and learn it differently. Music is an incredible way of understanding language, understanding others, because you don't need language. If you can play an instrument, if you can sing a song in a room full of people who do not speak your language, who do not understand what you're saying, yet you can convey a feeling, an emotion, you've created connection. You've created a bond, you've come together. And it seems that our education world is basically not about coming together, but about separating. Or unless you are on this side of the fence or you're on that side of the fence. I just want to, so the This Land project I'm doing is a documentary surrounded by a song that I did. One of my first ever songs I released, I've changed it. And I'm taking instruments from around the world, which you find here in Australia. Because in Australia, we have so many beautiful musical narratives, and we have instruments from all over the world here. You don't have to travel to get somebody from that. You got them here. And it's a story of my journey coming to Australia and me having this sense of belonging, you know, and that my blood now belongs to this land, that I would lay down for this land. Because when I made a commitment, when I stood and became a citizen, I swore my oath. And I don't take those kind of things lightly. And I'll defend my family, and I'll defend my friends, I'll defend Australia. And I feel that comes through in music. You sure we can write about, oh, I love the world and I love this and I love that, but we need to remember that without what we have here, you won't be able to make the music you want. You'll be told, we're already living in a world where we're being told. You're being told that, oh, if you don't believe in the gender, or you don't believe in this race, or you don't believe in this, because of that, your content won't get heard. Or if you're married to an outspoken Aboriginal leader who may not sit on the side of politics, then you are basically, content won't be heard. It's fearful, it's frightening. So I'm doing that project with you guys. I'm heading across to Nashville to do more writing for the next solo Colin Lillie album. I'm also been doing a little bit more work trying to meet other artists, creatives who have been
cancelled.
Yeah, cancel culture. And you know, like, so I can talk to them, learn their story, learn more about them. Because I'm not an educated man. I'm not an educated man in the world of books. I am an educated man in the world of life.
Thank you for being with us, Colin Lillie, today on this wonderful episode of IPA Encounters.
Thanks, John.